take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland. And I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
Welcome to Life in Red.
Everybody, welcome to Life in Red. Very pleased to be joined today by my guest, SabriNa Lemay, right? I'm supposed to always ask that before so I don't screw it up. And I didn't ask this time, and now I just asked it on mic, so
and
go
you
me.
did a perfect job.
Yes. You are the person who I credit to kind of kickstarting the launch of my speaking for mental health. So that's a really cool connection between us. So I don't know if I've ever had the chance to say thank you for that, but thank you.
Well, no problem, because that's all about the community, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Getting everyone involved.
So you are obviously another mental health speaker. We both speak at the Royal for the Is It Just Me program, which is funded through Do It for Darren. How did you kind of get involved in that? Because did you have someone like yourself, what you did for me, like, hey, you'd be a great person for this?
Well, I guess it was like almost 15 years in the making for me. So I have quite a story, my own mental health story, and something that's always driven me. I always said, what's gotten me through everything is I want to help people. I want to help people. And so many of the most amazing mentors in my life were always like, SabriNa, you got to work on yourself before you can help other people, like take care of you. And so when I finally felt I was at a place that I was ready, and actually getting some therapy through the Royal, which had been incredibly helpful, I was reaching out, and I was introduced to Sue, who you've met. And Sue was like, yeah, there's these speaking opportunities. And I was like, amazing. First, I was like so nervous. Like the first time, I don't know about you, the first time were you a bit nervous?
Yeah, I couldn't keep my hands from shaking.
Yeah, so the first time was so different, and now like it's evolved so much. And so, it's super amazing.
It's different. It's so different that, I could share my story with whoever, one-on-one, no problem. I can talk about it all day on social media. But sharing that story in front of a room, especially a room of teens, it's I don't know what the right word is, because it's not scary. I guess you can kind of see the
a little intimidating.
Like there could be a lot riding on things you say, because these are impressionable young people that could be going through what's the start of their mental illness journey, or their story. They might be going through something, and you don't know, you don't want to say the wrong thing. And so that's one of the things that struck me about it, for sure. Yeah,
and I mean, like, there was a time in my life where I was like, I don't know if I'm going to do any more speaking. Maybe I need to take a break from it. And then right after one of these speaking engagements, I had a young girl come up to me and say, oh my God, I thought I was going crazy. I didn't know what was wrong with me. She was crying, and she said, your story resonated with me. I feel okay. And I was like, well, I'm not going to stop speaking, because that was like a sign for me to just keep going. So yeah, like you said, they're so impressionable at that age. And it's so important, right? Yeah.
I always say in part of my speech is that it's not necessarily I didn't want to tell anybody what was going on. I didn't really know or understand or recognize that what I was feeling or thinking was actually something more like depression or anxiety. Like no one talked about it, even when I was going through it like 10, 12 years ago. So for now, for youth to have this opportunity to hear people talk and share their story in a very real, kind of non-clinical, technical way, where you're just like, yeah, like, I did some dumb shit, and this is what I thought, and these were my feelings, and people are like, oh shit, yeah, I totally do. I think that way too. It's such a great thing.
Yeah, it's groundbreaking.
Yeah,
really.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you said that you did it because you wanted to help other people, and it's such a interesting thing that everyone I talk to who kind of is on the advocacy side of mental health, they all kind of say the same thing, that like, they all suffer, but knowing that they feel like helping other people will make them feel better and give their lives meaning, and that's kind of why they get into it, because they want to help other people. And I've just found that right across the board, which is very interesting.
Yeah, it's really great to have that feeling. I mean, I certainly feel like it's my purpose in life. So
yeah, I think we kind of have empathy towards other people because we know how it's like at the bottom of the barrel type feeling. And my thing is always like, I don't want anyone else to feel this way, so I'm just gonna try to prop other people up.
Absolutely. And the more we could speak out.
Yeah. So you mentioned right off the top that you have quite the mental health story. Why don't we start kind of at the beginning? When did it all do you first remember some of the things starting for you?
Yeah, so I can actually tell a bit of a fun story to start.
A fun mental health story.
Only fun because, I mean, if you were in Ottawa and went to Blues Fest this year, you know that the Backstreet Boys were there.
Oh, yes.
So I was 10 years old when I went to my first Backstreet Boy concert, and I was so excited. And I'm sitting at what was once called the Corral Center, and I had my first panic attack, and I couldn't watch the concert. I didn't know what it was. My mom's like, Sabrina, you're just probably really excited. And I'm like, oh my God, I don't think I'm excited. And my heart was racing, and everything just started getting really blurry. And I had to be taken out of the the hall where they were doing the concert hall. And I never actually got to see them. So I was like peeking in and out sometimes because my dad had been waiting with his friend, and lo and behold, from there on out, after 10 years old, I had constant anxiety attacks and panic attacks. So, but I did get to see the Backstreet Boys this year.
You
and
did
that's
see
why
them
I
this
said
year.
it
Okay.
was like a fun story because it was like this whole. I was with my cousin at the time when I was 10 years old, and her and I went this time as well. So it was like just this moment,
happy
you know?
ending.
Yeah.
I know when I first experienced my panic attack, so like a little different from you, is I've never experienced it in public. Mine have always been like just these random times, like I'm either trying to get ready for bed or like I'm alone doing something. What did yours like? Was the way I described it is I try to take a big deep breath, but I can't get that relieving sensation in my stomach. Like, when you take a nice deep breath, you're like, I can't do that. And then I start freaking out more that I can't do that. I'm like, oh my God, am I dying? I actually just had my first panic attack in 6 years since I started medication on Tuesday, which is yesterday as we record this. Yeah. Monday.
Yeah. So like my anxiety and panic have changed their face many times. So when it first started out, it's so funny because now I talk on stage and I can be in front of thousands of people and it doesn't bother me at all in different events. But I could not go into a crowd. So if it was Canada Day, it was like just this tremendous panic. So yeah, out of breath, anxiety, everything's moving too quickly, even if things are just at a normal speed, But I've certainly experienced what you're talking about as well, where you're like completely fine. You're like, I'm doing fine. I'm reading a book. And then all of a sudden my heart will race and everything's kind of going crazy. So yeah.
Was there something that you think like triggered it that came on? Like for me, it was all like a lot of them were like I was like young and I would always be like, oh, one day I have to die, and like I couldn't get over that feeling. That's where my panic attack would come in. Like, was there a certain thing, like you're in a crowd, you're like, oh, what if this happened? And then you started getting a panic attack, or it was just very
random. Like it just happened. And that's, I think the hardest part was I didn't really understand. And I mean, lucky for me is my parents both have anxiety. So they knew what it was immediately. So they were like, you have anxiety. And so I was like, okay. And then as I got older, and my story went a little bit further, it started to shape itself differently. But I do remember missing school even sometimes when I was younger because I'd be up all night with an anxiety attack. So. Wow.
Okay. Fast forward a bit. What started to happen after that? So you had anxiety, you'd get panic attacks. How did, that's even pretty young for, I think, I mean, I'm not the scientist or anything, but from what I've heard, that's pretty young to experience that type of, mental health issue, disorder. What keep taking us through like your step by step as we're going through 12, 14, 16 as things start to really
Yeah, and I mean, like, I find mental health, there's really no age limit at this point, and they kind of come out at all ages, and sometimes I think for me, I was lucky, like I said, because my parents had anxiety, where some children don't even know how to actually explain that. So they often go undiagnosed for quite some time and even act out in different
Maybe
ways
that's what it
to
is
deal
then.
with themselves. Yeah. So it's funny because it kind of like became second nature to me. I'd go for walks to get over this. My parents would take me for long walks, my dad in particular, and stay up all night with me. And it kind of got better as I got older. And then at 16, life kind of changed for me. My family had lost about 6 close family members in a span of 5 years. So like aunts, uncles, grandparents, like, so as soon as you were mourning one person, another, and then you'd be getting over that and then another. And it was direct impact, right? And then my grandmother passed away. And at that time, my boyfriend broke up with me at that time, the very same day. And it was hard for me because it was my first love. And we know in high school, your first love is everything. But it was very, very impactful for me. And at the same time, I felt like I kind of lost my mom a little bit too, because, you know, when all these deaths are happening, it's really hard. And as a child, as a teen, I guess, I didn't understand depression, to be honest. When you're in it or you start to fall in it, I don't think you know. You kind of are going through the motions, and that's why it's so great, right, that we're talking about it nowadays, so that people can recognize it before they fall down that rabbit hole. And so as everyone was kind of passing away and my family was changing, I just started noticing things differently, and I guess I felt a little bit jaded, if that makes sense. And then I was having stomach problems. So lots of stomach problems, and I would go to work, and I started experiencing IBS, so irritable bowel syndrome. And that was really hard because I was no longer in control of my body and the way it was reacting. And I would try and eat, and my stomach would be in excruciating pain. And I would be hunched over. And I mean so much pain that I would be brought to emergency, and they would send me home. I would go to the family doctor, and he said, you know, I think you have allergies. You should play the elimination diet. Well, at this point, I'm about 17, 18, and play the elimination diet. Well, anything that upsets my stomach, I would stop eating. Because I'm 17, 18. I want to go out and have fun with my friends. I had gotten a new boyfriend at the time. Like, I was just trying to move on with my life until I eliminated everything. And I went from 112 pounds to 69 pounds at 19 years old.
Gosh.
And there was a lot of judgment there. And again, I didn't even notice it until, and I remember a specific moment. Like, I was in the mirror, I put on these pants that I loved, and they no longer fit. And only then did I really go, oh my God, what happened? And my family was going through a lot as well, so they didn't necessarily see it all happen either. It was kind of like you were there and then you weren't. And that was really, really hard. And I didn't know what was happening. So I thought, am I dying? Like, what's going on? My stomach hurts. And never once did my family doctor say, hey, what's going on in your life? And I don't play the blame game, right? So I take 100% responsibility for my life. But I think if I had been asked that back then, I could have really saw it as a lot of depression and these stomach issues relating to the depression and stress I was feeling with, you know, financial issues in my family, all the deaths happening, the breakups, trying to become a woman from a teen to a woman, young adult. Because all of a sudden, like I said, the irritable bowel syndrome is very much linked to stress and anxiety.
That's one of the... I've had a few conversations with this, both on this podcast and off of it, but I hear far too many stories of women, especially women, and their issues kind of being dismissed or not taken seriously when it comes to health issues, you know, like whether it's chronic pain or something like this. That I know you're saying you didn't play the blame game, but I've heard so many stories of that from so many different people that, yeah, they went to a doctor and they were trying to deal with something that they were experiencing, and like we're almost just like, oh yeah, it's probably this, just take some Advil, or like, and you would go back, or you'd go to the, you know, emergency room, and they're just like, oh yeah, you're fine, we don't see anything, sorry. But like, you know, it just that scares me, and I don't know what that's like as a man, but it's scary how many stories I've heard of that.
Yeah, and I mean, I think we're so lucky today, right? Because now stress is really being recognized in the body and how it affects, right? I feel like a lot more doctors are starting to understand that, at least more than they did back then.
Yeah.
Because I remember many trips to emergency in excruciating pain and being sent home and the doctor saying, she's at an eating disorder age in her life. And, it was kind of like, okay, well, help.
Yeah.
I'm here.
Yeah.
Help me.
Wow.
So, yeah, I mean, that was a really hard and scary time in my life. So my hair was brittle and dry. I shut down entirely. I remember keeping my boyfriend up at night and saying, like, watch me. I'm afraid to sleep at night. I'm like, so afraid to sleep. What if my heart stops? Everyone was like, well, why didn't you just eat? Why couldn't you eat? Well, you got to understand. So when you are 112 pounds and go down to 69 pounds, that is an eating disorder. That is disordered eating. And I hate to put a label on it because I'm all about being label free. And these are things we've gone through and not who we are or what we are. But your brain starts developing different traits. And there's actually a very cool study that they did with some soldiers in the military that came back where they deprived them of food and watched their reactions and how they were once that food was deprived. So they started counting calories, being obsessed with food and recipes. And so all of a sudden at this weight, I'm becoming obsessive about food. I'm reading ingredients. I never cared about any of this before. Your brain just, because it wants that nourishment so badly. So yeah, I was always so cold. I was hiding under baggy clothes all the time. I was very isolated. It was a very, very scary time. Later on, I was diagnosed with osteoporosis. And I was flat out told that my bones were like a 92-year-old, which was really scary to hear at a young age.
Were the two linked? Like, did you get that because of the disorder?
I would think so, because what also correlates is I also lost my menstrual cycle. And when you lose your menstrual cycle, your body starts trying to take estrogen as a woman from your bones. Oh. And so not only was I not nourishing properly, but my body was trying to keep itself alive. I'm happy to say now that I've rebuilt most of my bone mass, which is amazing, and I'm very, very grateful for that. But it was quite the journey. So me and my boyfriend had split up, and I just started working on myself. I didn't go into a facility, not that there's anything wrong with that, because I believe that sometimes that is required. But I just started forcing myself to eat no matter how much pain I would be in. Later on, I was diagnosed with celiac and lactose intolerant. But a lot of that was because I deprived myself for so long. So your body starts creating autoimmune disorders. So my diet's changed significantly from when I just started to try and gain weight. I was like, just eat whatever. But building that love and that healthy relationship with food took a very, very long time. And I think it's like a working progress because we all outlet our stress in different areas,
Yeah, absolutely. It's and like it kind of never goes away, right? Like you're kind of always trying to update and learn new things about it, how to take care of yourself. That it's not necessarily just okay, all fixed up now.
Exactly.
It's hard. What were some of the like resources, what kind of like that you were using to try to fix yourself? I don't know what the time frame was of that. Was it reading a lot of books? Was it talking to professionals? Was it a combination? I don't know. I don't think there was YouTube wasn't as big in the mid 2000s. You know what I mean? So
it was really a friend of the family that helped me out a lot. My parents were there for me, but it was hard for them to be there because they're so close. So I think that there was like a form of anger as well because they just wanted to see me better, right? And not even anger, but frustration with the situation. So they were very much there, but it was a challenge for them. Definitely a lot of reading. I'm all into self-help books, so a lot of reading. But then there was a time where I kind of backslid again, so I got better. And then I kind of backslid again. I got stressed. I was working in an environment that wasn't healthy. My boss used to say things to me like, go eat a steak. Do you have an eating disorder or something? Because I was quite thin. And that was a real challenge to have to work in an environment like that. I guess that was when things really started to change for me, because I basically walked out of my job. And because I had decided I was going to get some help. I was going to finally get some help because I was very fearful of food. So I was also later on diagnosed with something called puro OCD, which I can get into, but I patterned my food, and I had these very safe foods, because now that I was eating, I didn't want to feel sick. I didn't want my stomach to get upset. I didn't fully understand celiac. Thank God everybody else knows about gluten now, because there's so many restaurants that accommodate. But when I'd be in the workplace, no, I didn't really eat lunch. I would hide what I would be eating, or I would like eat something separately, or go home and eat. So my boss was saying all these things, and one day I just walked out and took a leave of absence and started really focusing on myself and getting the help I needed. And I had amazing, amazing mentors that I think really changed my entire life. And without them, I don't know where I would be.
Before we get into that pure OCD, I know there was a time you said that you were like living out of your car.
So my family had gone through some pretty crazy financial issues, and we had gotten evicted from our home, and I was in denial. So the whole house was packed up, and I kept my bedroom totally intact, and then the moving truck pulled up, and there I was packing my bedroom. And I didn't have a car at the time, so we also lost our family vehicle at the time. So I went and got a vehicle. And my parents were in a moving truck, moving around and trying to find a place to live. My brother was with his girlfriend, and I lived in my car. I was working 3 jobs to pay for my vehicle. And I mean, people go, how'd you get through that? And I'm like, I don't know. Like, I think that there's something deep inside myself. Like I said, and I wanted to help people. And I knew that, one day I'm going to be able to help people. And I'm not joking, because like I didn't love myself enough to do it for me. It was just kind of survival, and you have to get through. And I certainly couch surfed sometimes, but I had more nights in my car than I did couch surf. And my parents hate to hear this story because it breaks their heart. They're very sorry to this day that had to happen. But life happens. Yeah. Right? Things happen. And it was a time in my life, a season. And it's made me a much stronger person, and also just valuing other people way more too, because I was serving at a restaurant, and when, I don't know about you, but when you're at a restaurant, you're just enjoying your time eating your meal. You never think of your server as homeless or going to live in their car. And so when people have bad days or whatever, it has made me so much more humble as a person to look at them and go, oh, you don't know their story, So
it's one of the biggest things I've found, especially through this podcast, through, the speaking, through working full-time career is that's the biggest thing, is like, even the guy who's flipping like me off, the person who's angry on Facebook commenting, like I have to reserve some right being like, I don't know what they're going through. So I have to be understanding. I don't have to accept it, but I also have to be very understanding of what it is, because it could be something horrible and this is their outlet, right? It's like a child bully, right? Like that typically they're being bullied at home and they're just putting it out on somebody else.
Exactly, and often it's not even about you, right? It really is about them, so.
Yeah, exactly. So it's one of the biggest things. But going back to how long was it a couple months? Was it a couple weeks?
I think it was 5 or 6 months.
Wow.
A lot of it's a blur now, because it was like full summer, that's for sure.
Day-to-day survival mode, just
and I remember having my first shower, and I was like, oh my God, like it felt so good,
puts things into perspective for me, and I hope for people listening that, I mean, you hear it all the time with with the world, like you should be lucky you have that, because not everyone does, and it's so easy to get lost. Like, you get a rough email, or you get in trouble at work, or you get in a little squabble with your girlfriend, or your phone breaks, and just like it seems like the end of the world. But like, just hearing the stories of people like yourself who have really kind of had to find their way with more than just an inconvenience, that like that's why I love hearing these stories, even though as much as it might be difficult and stuff like that it puts those things in perspective, that yeah, I might break my phone, but you had to live in your car for 6 months and work 3 jobs. Like I work, most people work like 6 to 8 hours and go like, oh, my life, I hate it. Right. Like, and
Yeah, and I think
it's
removing that stigma too, right? I mean, I never had to sleep on the street, but even when I'm walking around and I see the homeless people on the street, the youth, the adults, whomever, a lot of the times people assume why they're there, right?
Drugs
and sometimes,
or-
yeah, and we have no idea what their story is, you know? And like I said, just because I didn't look like I was sleeping in my car, but I was, you know what I mean? So really, we shouldn't judge how someone's got there, how it happened, because it can happen to anybody.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny that a lot of the time, you know, we get into the world today that a lot of people try to avoid struggle. But I honestly believe, and I'm not talking about like the struggle that you had to go through, but like struggle is also, it's bad, but it's also good. I think it does make us come out stronger on the other end when we make it through. And I think you're a shining example of that.
I mean, I think every great life coach in the world has gone through some sort of like struggle, right?
Absolutely. Like any successful person, like we think like even like the richest people in the world, we're like, they're born rich. And you're like, no, like they've, you know, probably slept on a few couches and stuff like that too. And that's just talking about money, but like that you came out, that if you didn't say you had a mental like health issues, you know, people wouldn't ever think that of you. I don't think like
I've heard that quite a few times. Actually,
you've always struck me as someone who is like uber positive and like, smiling and happy, and your emails like, you know, have a lovely day, like that type of stuff. Like you exude positivity. So, and that's one of the hardest things for people who don't have a mental illness, I think, to understand.
Yeah, and I think that that's what's gotten me through a lot of it as well, right? Is that it really is mindset and perspective and how we choose to view the world. I mean, I could have said pity me and played out that story forever. And I've had my fair share of pity trips where I've had people say like, pick yourself up, you know, and I had to dust off my shoulders and move on. But really, it's just keeping positive and knowing that there's so much more to life. This is just a season, right? And I think, yeah, it really is our perception that we create and the stories we tell ourselves in our heads about what we're going through that really, really change things.
You mentioned pure OCD. You talked to me a little bit off mic about it, but like I never heard of that, and I'm pretty involved with the community. What is that? What is that like for you? How does that impact you, like on a day-to-day basis?
So most people know what OCD is. And in fact, nowadays, right, people are like, oh, I'm so OCD or like whatever. But it really is a very debilitating mental health issue. So I didn't even know I had this, and it randomly came about. But anyway, pure OCD is intrusive, unwanted thoughts, images, and impulses that are far outside of your character. So it basically takes your biggest fear and tries to manifest it into reality and tricks your brain into believing that it's almost real. And that all kind of took place in my life when I decided to leave my job. And that's why I said things really started to change for me when I left work. Leaving work was hard for me because I'm a very busybody. Anybody who knows me, I'm high energy. I like to keep going. Doesn't matter what I'm going through. But when I took time off work, I was at home. And then you're kind of forced to face yourself a little bit. And that was tough. So one day I'm in the kitchen, and this alarms some people, is I'm in the kitchen and I'm cutting up a red pepper, and I have this vision that I'm going to stab my boyfriend with a knife, and I freak out. And I push the knife away and I back away. And like when I go to the Royal and I speak to the youth, you should see their faces. And I'm usually like, yeah, I thought I was crazy too. No judgment, you know. And but it was really hard. And I'd wake up in the middle of the night and go, oh my gosh, did I do something in my sleep? What's going on? And I openly told my boyfriend at the time, and he's like, you're not going to do that. What are you talking about? Like, what's going on? But then that thought changed into I'm driving my car and, oh my God, what if I drive my car off the bridge? I don't want to do it, but what if I do? oh my God, what if I end my life? Then I would go home and all of a sudden I don't want to have any Tylenol bottles in the house. I don't want anything near me. I don't want to be around my boyfriend. It becomes very debilitating. I was freaking out. I even called the helpline and they couldn't do much for me except for say like, well, if you're in danger, go, but it wasn't like that. It was just that I thought I was a danger to everybody else and started hating myself for the types of thoughts I had. And OCD is repetitive compulsions. So these thoughts just kept repeating over and over and over. I couldn't go to the gym anymore. I couldn't listen to music. I didn't want to watch the news. So afraid that anything would trigger that thought. And later on, I was diagnosed with puro OCD and was explained that these are intrusive, unwanted thoughts and all of that stuff. And I practiced cognitive behavioral therapy. And that really was life-changing for me. I guess on a scientific level, the way cognitive behavioral therapy works, are you familiar?
Yep. I'm trying it myself now for the first time.
Yeah. And it's a lot of work. But as you know, I'm very much into yoga and consciousness. And the way I see it from like a spiritual perspective is that it really is like going to your consciousness to see that thought and know it's not real and be able to remove yourself from it before you react and fall into that panic mode of, oh my God, what if I do this? What if I... Because the truth is, as I studied puro OCD and learned more about it, is that in life, the average person has 100 of bad thoughts a day. They could be driving down the highway and go, I want to like ram into this car because someone cut me off. Or when you have puro OCD, you're like, oh my God, I'm a bad person. I just thought I would ram my car into that person. What if I do it? What if I... And it just kind of like snowball effect. So I guess it's learning to let those thoughts kind of pass through you. But it was one of the biggest challenges I certainly ever had to go through and come out of on top, which... And yeah, today, I mean, it depends. When stress arises, I have different things happen. Maybe it's anxiety, maybe it's the puro OCD, but I've really learned how to deal with it and kind of get past it. But certainly, I mean, there are days where it can defeat me. That's why I never say, I'm healed, because you're never really, we're always a working progress, right? Yeah.
I'm trying to paint a picture of what this is like in my head. Like, how vivid are these thoughts, these impulses? Like, is it something that like almost to the level of like a hallucination where like you literally see it happening, or is it just like kind of like just like it's just a thought, but it just you can't get it out of your head and like you start panicking because you can't get it out of your head? Like, I'm just trying to get the...
You don't see it happening. Your brain actually makes you believe you're going to do it.
Okay.
Or it's going to happen, or even to yourself, right? Like, that person's going to do something to me. Like, it really makes it become like a reality for you. And until I was able to like bring myself back, like I certainly joined help groups for puro OCD. I have a friend who actually has the same diagnosis, who I speak to, and we can now laugh at it and go, yeah, it's just our thoughts, you know. I was in a group therapy for puro OCD to get over it through talking and cognitive behavioral therapy. But yeah, it was a really scary time, especially because, like, as you said, right, I'm always so positive and so happy, and I'm like, how am I having these thoughts? What is happening to me? You know, so that was like, am I losing my mind? Am I, you know, and even speaking like that, I don't even like to go there, you know, because
that's difficult, especially, you know, the things that can come through your mind, right? Of all the scenarios, it's. Yeah. In your research, like, I don't know if you know the answer to this question, but like, is there a certain percentage of the population that might like have that diagnosis at all? Like, is there anything in the literature about that?
I don't know about a certain percentage, but I did find some really interesting things. I mean, it didn't happen to me that way, but certainly like trauma can make that come out. So we all have this type of OCD apparently, and trauma could set it off. I read that you can have a high fever as a child and then be diagnosed with puro OCD, that this fever creates some sort of chemical reaction in the body that creates this type of behavior that just doesn't end up going away. So there's like a whole bunch of different theories. So I'm not 100% sure, but I will tell you that I really believe that we can really work on minimizing our symptoms and healing ourselves through a lot of like self-care. So,
because when you tell me about it, it sounds at least a little similar to schizophrenia in a way. We're not necessarily the same, obviously not the same things, but just like the thought I have is how many people who have done, whether it's, take their own lives or take somebody else's lives or do something horrific, like maybe had this undiagnosed or diagnosed, like, because again, like, unless you have it, I don't know if you really hear about it in any form of talks or, even when you hear about mental health on the internet, it's pretty much depression and anxiety. And then people are very afraid of schizophrenia, and that's kind of like a blacklisted mental illness in a way. Just, I just wonder out loud that I wonder how many people have it or have gone through it and these things we hear about, you know what I mean? Like, yeah,
I'm not sure. I know it does differ quite a bit from schizophrenia for sure. Especially because it's that obsessiveness, right? Mm-hmm. So there are other things that go along with it. So okay. When you have these thoughts, you need reassurance. So you need to say the thought out loud so you immediately don't feel like a bad person. And you think I'm going to be okay? You think that thought's not real? Do you think I'm going to be okay? And then you almost need to wait for somebody to be like, right, okay, you're fine, like you're going to be okay. Are you sure? Like it's looking for that reassurance, or Google doctoring and needing to find the answers to know what's going on. And I guess what really sets it apart is, like I said, you go into this debilitating state of anxiety where you don't want to leave your house. You don't want to move. You don't want anyone to be around you. You want to protect the world from you because your thoughts are awful, and you look at yourself like a really awful person.
Right. So it's not necessarily impulsing you to do the action.
Exactly.
It's more like it's like crippling you thinking that you would think of this action.
Exactly.
Okay.
That's exactly
Gotcha. Trying to wrap my head around it.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. And so now, I mean, years later after going through that, I can't even tell you the last time I really experienced a thought like that after I did the therapy and stuff like that, because I'm such a huge advocate for myself, I guess, and constantly looking at ways to better myself and how I can help and work on situations. I feel like anytime I feel some sort of stress coming on, I know what to go into my toolbox for, because I have a lot of tools that have been placed in there now.
Mm-hmm. I find I'm very similar to you, where what keeps me going is like self-improvement. Like it's not about like thinking I'm perfect the way I am and all that. And if that works for you, that's great. But for me, I'm very much like you, where I'm like, okay, how can I be better? Do I need to work out harder? Do I need to learn more? Do I need to, just making myself a better person to help other people or to help myself, whatever it is. Like, I feel like that's my biggest motivator when it comes to mental health, is just trying to be like a really good person. What I'm wondering is, I see a lot, at least everyone knows my opinions on the internet. There's a lot of resistance to that, that line of thinking where people don't see the relation of me trying to make myself a better person and doing all this really hard work, because like either the depression won't let me, or like that's not needed. Like that's not going to help me because I'm depressed. Like, what would you say if someone's like coming up to you on that? Because I see it quite frequently, especially
like if someone says that won't help me.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like they're like, oh, nice of you to say, but like I can't do that. I can't get out of bed because I'm depressed. You know what and I've had this conversation with people because I know how difficult that it can be sometimes. But
well, I mean, again, so I always say my story is no more significant than the next person's. And I have heard that as well, because I do coach some people. I certainly have some coaching going on and all that kind of stuff. And I have heard that. And it really is a mindset. So there is nothing you can't do, right? So I'm always finding myself talking that person up in those times of darkness and giving them tools. So it's kind of like, well, do a gratitude journal. Well, there's nothing I'm grateful for. Absolutely there is. Well, I'm depressed. There's nothing I'm grateful for. Someone held the door open for me, and that made me so happy. Like someone writes me a little message, and that made my day. There are so many little things. Having a warm bed, having your first breath in the morning. It's trying to bring that back into someone's mind and vision, that there's so much more than what they're feeling. Because it's true, when they're in it, they're really in it. It's like I said, right, when I was going through the worst, I didn't even realize I was going through it. I was so deep in it. And if it wasn't for people who brought light to the situation for me, I don't know if I would have ever gotten out. And I've seen myself work with other people that I've mentored along the way, and they've really come on top, where it was just the smallest little things. And I'd say, hey, check in with me, because you need that accountability. You need an accountability partner to help you get out of bed sometimes. Ultimately, it's on you. No, I'm not going to take your hand and pull you out of bed. It is up to you. But I promise you, if you do it, there's so much more waiting.
Yeah. Do you get resistance to it, or, people thinking that that's silly, that it's dumb, it's not going to work? Like, you know what I mean? Like, that type of thinking that you have, I mean, there's science to back this, but there seems to be a lot of resistance towards it, especially with an older generation who doesn't necessarily understand it. Does it bother you at all? Like, does it get to you?
I'll tell you, it doesn't get to me. And the reason it doesn't get to me is because I've seen it work. I wouldn't be such an advocate for it if I haven't seen what it's manifested in my life. And certainly on my Instagram and my social media, I'm always talking very fluffy, but I also say, like, it doesn't always have to be so flipping poetic, right? Like, it is hard. There are tears. It is crappy. Some days you're barely able to pick yourself up. So yeah, on those days I say, just like, sometimes I'll go out into the forest and I'll just start, like, scream, let it out, There are other ways, whether it's through working out. So my approach isn't always so fluffy, right? It depends on the individual. Mental health is individual for each person. But like I said, for me, I wouldn't be such an advocate for it if I didn't see it come to life. And that is why I'm so positive.
What are some of the types of things you do now? So we've established, you're speaking, you've been to therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, all that stuff. What are some of, I like to call it maintenance, things that you do now to help either combat those feelings and just keep you along that path?
I will tell you, this is so funny. So just yesterday, I had a conversation with one of my good friends where someone once said, this can make you look like high maintenance, the way you talk all the time and stuff. My friend was like, yeah, but you do your own maintenance. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, we are high maintenance, but we do our own maintenance. And what I mean by that is self-love. So I work out. I make it a point to work out, getting my body moving. I go for a run. If I can run outside, I will run outside before I run inside to connect to nature, because that is scientifically proven that the way it will make you feel. I try and meditate every day, even if it's 10 minutes. And for those who don't like the word meditation, because that can go back to like spirituality, just sitting in silence and breathing. It doesn't have to be mantras, but I certainly do mantras. I do affirmations. I read. I watch podcasts. I listen to podcasts that inspire me. I do writing. I have a gratitude journal where I write 10 things I'm grateful for each day. There's just been little things that I add to my toolbox every day. I'm excited to wake up every day, because every day I'm like, okay, I'm working towards like goals here, and I know that the more I work on myself and do those like maintenances, I even go for massages. I go for like cranial massages to remove stress from your brain and your mind.
Cranial massages.
Oh my
I've never
God.
heard of them.
I'm not trying to like drop any names here, but Teresa from Sage Wellness, amazing.
Okay.
I see naturopathic doctors to help with other things. I really just try and listen to my body. Our bodies are very intuitive, and I still am a very busy body. But I have learned to take the time for myself, because if I don't, I never will. And that's how you fall down that rabbit hole.
Yeah, it's like the closing of my speech, that I like to have all these things I like to do, because I'm afraid if I take a day off, that I won't want to get back up, because I'll fall down that little rabbit hole and get off track and go down this place I don't want to be in, and which sometimes is unavoidable. But
yeah, and I mean, for me, it's really become lifestyle too. Like, this is a part of who I am, and not who I am as in, because I mean, I can get into that on a whole other subject, but not who I am as in like the story and the things I do, but this is just a part of my everyday life now. I enjoy meditating. I enjoy waking up at a certain time for a personal time by myself. I enjoy eating healthy, making sure that I'm nourishing my body, because I've seen the effects of not nourishing. And certainly do I fall off the wagon sometimes, and things don't always go the way I wanted them to, or I didn't eat as well as I should have? Yes. But I also forgive myself and move on and conquer it the next day.
Meditation. I've talked about this a lot on this podcast and with people. How long do you often do it for? Like if it all things being equal, it was a good day, how long would you meditate for?
Are you ready for this?
Yeah.
An hour.
Okay. I've heard that before too. Take us through what it's like, because I've tried it and it's very difficult to get started on it, but there are so many people who swear by this, and it doesn't even have to be a spiritual connection type thing. Some people are like, it's just good training for your brain. Like, again, that's scientifically proven, whether you believe in the spiritual nature of it or not. How do you start it? What do you do? You know, if someone's like, I hear about it all the time. I want to start it, but it's really hard. I can barely sit there for 30 seconds and do it. Like, coach me through it a little bit right now.
Well, why don't you tell me first, what's the type of meditation you've tried?
Meditation. That's it. I don't even know there's different kinds.
So, I mean, I can meditate almost anywhere now. And once you've gotten to that level, I mean, certainly if I want to go deep, it looks different. But you can do walking meditations. So
I've sat there. So I would sit mostly in a dark room, close my eyes, and just focus on my breathing and let my mind go, but then bring it back. That's the only thing I don't even know what kind of meditation that is. So anyone starting with meditation that's struggling, I always say to throw in an affirmation there, or anything like release, the word release, right? Especially because we all need to release. I don't care who you are. You've carried stress from your day, whatever. So you could just sit there, and as you're breathing, you just keep repeating release, release. And that kind of takes you back. So when your mind goes somewhere else, you bring it back to that. But I mean, we are by nature attracted by five senses, like what we see, what we hear, what we touch, what we smell. So there are times where I have my pillow and I put my incense on and I have my salt lamp going, and I create that environment, especially if I need that, just to feel like I'm rejuvenating myself in some way, restoring. I've done walking meditations, like I said, where I'm outside and I'm just breathing in and following my breath and actually bringing all awareness to what I'm doing. Because we walk, but we see the trees and we see that person and we see the car or whatever. When you're in nature, lucky for me, I get to see deer. Mm-hmm. But to actually bring full awareness to your body. It's oh, I'm taking a step. I'm breathing in. Fully feeling your feet and your toes touching the ground. There are other times where I'm running and I'm saying I'm healthy, I'm fine, and I'm well. That is a form of meditation, believe it or not. Sitting in traffic. You're in a traffic jam and you're annoyed. Why don't you take the time just to breathe through that and follow your breath? That's a form of meditation. So people like to complicate meditation. It doesn't have to be that complicated to start, because any form of breathing, no matter where you are, bringing that consciousness and awareness to it, is everything. I have a timer on my phone for each hour to remind me to breathe. So, because I know I'm busy, I'm always on the go. Oh yeah, okay, I'm going to take 3 breaths right now. But when I'm going into deep meditation, yes, I will sit in silence. I used to listen to music. That used to help set the mood. And then one of my mentors were like, SabriNa, you need to practice complete stillness. And that was a bit of a challenge, because I was like, I meditate all the time. What's going on? Mm-hmm. But when you're in complete silence, that's different, because your mind immediately, as humans, it's nature, right? We want to connect to something. We want to find something. We want to think about something. But I would just start focusing on my breath. Or if I'm working on wanting to heal something or release something, I focus on that. There are so many different ways, but I'm happy to walk you through different ways. Yeah. Is a mantra kind of saying the word release? It's that thing that brings you back. Is that what a mantra is? Yeah. What does it so you're sitting there for an hour. Does it have some sort of, again, when I think of deeper meaning or anything, I always think of like a vivid hallucination. Like I'm not talking like a drug trip. I'm just talking about like you just vividly see a different reality. Like what is it? Like what are some of the types of things that you experience? Or is it literally you're just focusing on your breath for an hour? Is there anything more to that, less than that?
So on a really good meditation, I mean, it's not like a hallucination, but some would say it is, right? You go really deep. So certainly you let go of your ego, essentially. And I'm not talking about ego like, oh, that person's so egotistic. I'm saying our ego of everyday life, the drive we have, who we think we are, what we do, all of that is gone and nothing matters. You are in complete content, complete love, complete happiness. You don't even realize you're fully meditating anymore because you let go. And you are filled with so much love. And that is like the best feeling in the whole world because nothing can get to you. It's like a full release. It's amazing. It's healing.
Yeah. Like I said, not only I've heard scientists, I've heard celebrities, I've heard people like.
I mean, you can see colors as well. Like there's many different levels of meditation.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah. Because everyone thinks. Well, not everyone. I used to think it's like you have to be like a Buddhist monk, like right, like you have to go in type thing. But you know, the more I've went into this mental health journey and just speaking with people and listening to people and just hearing everybody who does it just rave, like just say it helps so much. I'm just like get to that how does it help? I don't see. It's hard to understand unless you do it, I guess.
Yeah, and I mean, also people put a lot of pressure on it because I've also heard of people going, "I want it so bad," and then it doesn't happen, or I fell asleep. Well, also falling asleep during meditation is not a bad thing. People look at it like it's a bad thing, but your body is literally doing exactly what it needs to do at that time, and allowing your body to be present and do what it needs to do. Why is that bad? You know?
Yeah.
And adjusting the times. The best time to meditate is first thing in the morning. Because your brain is at this different level. Like there's these transmitters in your brain, and that's all scientific. I can go on about that as well. So.
Well, I've looked at the science. I've seen videos and I've seen TED Talks, and people like talk about this, and people doing brain scans versus like someone who's meditating. Yeah, and like just seeing the activity. Like like I said, it's not. Like some of my other podcast guests who's come on, they say woo woo, like where people are like, it's like hippie, it's wise, it doesn't work. Like there's clearly something going on, and whatever that is, like I guess that's up to the individual and what they experience. But
yeah, and I've really learned to not push my belief system on people. If they're interested and they're intrigued, like you asked me, I was like, okay, I'm ready to share, and it's exciting, and there's like this huge energy share. But I also don't push it on anyone because, like I said, I'm really looking to build a community, and I've seen my journey, and I've lived it. And where I am today, and I don't want to just say like, oh, you have to be spiritual, or you have to be a certain way, or you have to be connected in order to heal, because that's not true either, right?
Well, you did say you're a truth speaker.
Yes.
Like what is that like for you? Like what's that mindset for?
Yeah, so I just want to create more truth speakers. And what I mean by it is like I just told like whoever, all your followers that I had these crazy thoughts. And I mean, my story is so much deeper, and I'm not going to take up all the time because there's so many things that have happened in my life as everyone. But I'm not afraid to say what goes on. I'm an open book, and if people don't like it, they don't have to be around me. I think the best part about healing is owning your truth and taking 100% responsibility for where you are in your life. And that is thanks to, again, a mentor in my life. I believe every good mentor has a great mentor. And so being a truth speaker and saying how it is, and if my story can impact someone else and their story can impact someone else, the more truth we speak, the better the world is going to be.
I think a lot of people would also say that mindset is, I guess, not necessarily a good thing either. What I mean by that is taking 100% responsibility and owning yourself and your actions. And, a lot of people want to put blame on whether it's government institutions or other people or their employers or whatever.
Right, but we get to choose how we react to that. We get to choose how we feel about that. No, sometimes we can't change circumstance. That is very true. but we could take 100% responsibility for ourselves and how we react to something and how we allow it to affect us and impact us. Oh, well, I couldn't help it. They fired me or whatever. How was I supposed to take 100% responsibility for that? Well, are you letting it keep you in bed all day? Or are you searching for another job? You know, like there are so many ways to look at things.
Mm-hmm. Do you ever worry about being like offending people, being offensive? Like, I'm not saying you're going on like a big racist tirade or anything, but like, do you worry about that when you're saying speaking your truth, speaking the truth, or what you choose to believe is the truth? Does that worry you? Because it is a world where we're very highly sensitized on certain topics and subjects, especially when it comes to mental health.
I will offend people. That's the reality. I think everyone offends everybody, and in today's world, people look for reasons to be offended. I'm not perfect. I may not say things as nicely as people would like. I may not have a belief system that people believe in, and I'm also okay with that because I feel like I'm in this place in my life that I'm just moving towards my truth, and whoever I can help along the way, that's my purpose, you know? So the way I offend people, I mean, I hope I don't, but I also know it will happen. That's the reality.
Yeah. I recently started going to therapy again. And it was over this anxiety that everything that I did and do and who I am, like, is going to inevitably get me in trouble somehow, based on like this kind of culture we have. Like, I was just consumed with the thought that my life would spiral down because someone would either say something about me or believe something to be true about me that might be false, accuse me of something. Like, it overwhelmed me to the point where like I had a mental breakdown and I had to like re-enroll in therapy for the first time in 6 years. Like, it was like you were saying, some of these things were debilitating. Like, that was debilitating for me. Like, I'm so worried. I'm getting better now. I'm doing cognitive behavioral therapy, but like that took over my life for like a good 5-6 months.
Yeah. And I mean, sometimes it's trying to write down even the amazing things that you do to like look for the opposing effect on how those thoughts wouldn't be true. Right.
Yeah.
And I know it's easier said than done, but I mean, I used to carry around in my purse like all the things that I'm proud of about myself because I couldn't remember it. So anytime I'd have a bad day, I'd pull it out. So like, what are the reasons, that people love me or people aren't going to sabotage my life or whatever, right? And writing those down to remind yourself, so when those thoughts come in, you could be like, nope, that's not true.
Yeah, that's the thing I'm working through, right? Because we have, I like to think I do a lot of good, and I try to help people best I can, but I don't know if you're on Twitter or anything. I've talked about this a whole bunch, but we live in this kind of cancel culture era, this, if someone does something that they don't like people go to like try to take them down for everything. Or, they make a mistake and people like come after them and email their employer or, like what you've done doesn't really matter. It's not even, that doesn't have to be true. It's what people perceive as what they think is true. And that's what I'm really working through right now is just, it's not even easy as me. Like it's such an overwhelming worry of mine, and I probably should get off the internet, to be honest. But
no, it really is true. People create stories right in their own minds.
That's what they said. I'm a mind reader.
Yeah.
That's what that I create these narratives in my head, and then kind of become obsessive about them. And I didn't really recognize about that self until it was pointed out to me. I was like, oh, I do that. Damn.
But now you're working on it.
Working on it, yeah. That's the first
and it's
part
a working progress. And now you're going to have more tools in your toolbox.
Yeah, the biggest thing was once I started speaking to all these people, like before that, I thought I had myself relatively together. Obviously, there's things that I knew I had to work on. But I was like, once I started speaking in front of people and just really took like a very critical look at myself, I was like, I don't have my shit together, even though I'm doing a lot better than I was. I'm still doing pretty well, but I was like, oh, there's some issues there that I need to address for sure. And I think that just goes to that evolving story. Like it doesn't really stop.
Exactly.
It's not like I'm healed. Here I am now, everybody, and look how great I am now. It's like, nope, like here I am, but also like, hey, I'm still doing all this
and
stuff.
again, this is exactly what I mean by being a truth speaker, because you're opening up and saying like, yeah, I'm still going through stuff. Like, this is reality. We are always going to be going through stuff. We are humans. There's always going to be something that knocks us down, and we just have to pick ourselves back up and move forward, because like I said, there's always something better.
So, you know, you're on my podcast now. You're sharing your story. We're talking about all the things you're doing. Like, what do you want this to be? Do you have like a grand hope? Like, you've mentioned a couple of times that you feel this is your purpose. Is it just, you know, helping people? Is it something bigger? Like, what do you want to do? Like, what do you want to do when you grow up?
Well, and it's so funny because I never thought that this was going to be my purpose and my passion. And I mean, two things. Like, I love to speak out about it because I have a very successful career, and I'm very proud of my job, and I've my hands in a lot of different pots, and I love my job. And I want to say that it doesn't matter what you're going through, you can still be successful. It doesn't matter where you've been. It doesn't matter who you are, where you are. You can always rise, and I want that to be very apparent, because I've met a lot of youth who don't feel that way, that they have an upbringing that they feel they're going to be a certain way because of it, or they're going through this, so they'll never amount to this. So speaking out to the youth is huge for me, especially because I feel like at that age, it is a very important time in your life to be able to recognize and be aware. So I do have big plans. I am hoping to do some mental health symposiums. I am an event planner by trade. So some big events that I'm planning behind the scenes and working on, which is a huge dream of mine that I hope will reach a larger network. I do hope to write a book someday, so that's all in the works. And then, just coaching with individuals and building that community. So the big plan is in the works, and just meeting people and networking to make it all happen.
So if people are interested in either one, connecting with you for coaching, or exploring, you know, more of your beliefs and this positivity that you've been, you know, radiating, like, you can hear it through your voice. Like, how can people find you, get in touch, and discover some of the stuff you're working on?
Yeah, so I have a Facebook page, SabriNa Lemay, so just my name. And then on my Instagram, it's mindbodysoul.work, because that's what it is. It's our mind, our bodies, and our souls, and all that work that kind of goes into it. And I say work, but it's really a lot of play too, because, you know, when we make it work, it doesn't feel so fun. It gets a little bit harder, you know?
Something you have to do instead of you want to do.
It's like breaking the rules. That's another part of it, right? Break the rules. My approach to healing is a little bit different. Like, I definitely find therapy is important. I certainly have a tune-up that I'll do every 6 months or whatever, just to release. And I think therapy, I mean, there was a time where if you said you were going to see your therapist, people would be shameful, right? But I think it's so important. But I also think that breaking the rules of therapy and stepping past your boundaries, like, if you're ready to really get in there and dig deep, there's a whole other world out there. And
that's what you're talking about, you're sharing,
exactly.
you're getting into. Any plans on, I know you said you had all these things, but a podcast, YouTube, any of these kind of more content pieces to get it out there, or just right now it's just Instagram and we'll see where we go? Yeah,
I mean, right now it's Instagram. I have been asked by a couple people to start a YouTube, so it's something I've been thinking about. In truth, it's finding the time. Yeah. Because I need to make sure I have that self-love constantly. Yeah. But this is my passion and my drive, and I see it evolving and just continuing to evolve. So we'll see where it goes. All right. So we'll stay tuned for sure. Again, Instagram one more time, mindbodysoul.work. So all one word, .work. Perfect. SabriNa, thank you for coming on, sharing your story, your message. I look forward to, we've been talking for a while about working together on certain things, so seeing where that goes. And absolutely, people are going to just see something happen. Yeah, hopefully. Anyways, thanks for coming on. Bye, everybody.
You take the red pill. You stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.